Hi, everyone. My name is Keith. I'm a fellow at the Berkman Klein Center. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about using games and simulations to help students build technical skills. And I should say up front that these are old ideas that have been bouncing around for a while, and these are just my riffs and reflections on them. So, last fall, I co-designed and taught a course at Georgetown. And criminal justice, technology, policy, and law was a practicum, which meant that in addition to learning about substantive law and policy issues, students executed practical technical projects with the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition and the Maryland Governor's Office. So most of my career has been spent training lawyers on how to use design and technology. And so lawyers are already experts in something. Really all I'm doing then is just teaching them to apply another structure to their expertise. But students are still building that expertise, so it requires sort of a different way of thinking about how to teach them. So take program evaluation, for instance. Evaluating whether what you did works is really, really important. But it's hard for that to land in a lecture unless you've actually executed a program. It's also kind of a drag to listen to. So 5 days before the lecture, I decided to make a game, or rather a simulation. Students were tasked with evaluating a fictional prison reentry program, a pet project of a governor who was about to be term limited out. So students were presented with a blank outline containing 12 findings, organized into 4 recommendations. They had to find all 12. The feel of the game was more of a Dungeons and Dragons approach, and it was pretty analog. Some Post-its, we used the blackboard as a game board, a handful of printed handouts, and just sort of let them run with it. And so students could interview program staff, all played by my co-professor, which was really important as a way to get information, but also has lots of rabbit holes. They could run focus groups, which were controlled by a dice roll. Focus groups can be really valuable, but sometimes nobody shows up. They could also request data from a really persnickety data administrator who would give them exactly what they asked for, not a single data point more. And finally, they could do research. They could sick a graduate, a student off requesting a topic and get an abstract back. And so, as you may have surmised from me being up here, the game was something of a hit. But it was a hit in ways that we didn't really anticipate. Students wanted something like this earlier in the semester as a way to practice for the tasks that they would eventually have to execute in their programs or in their projects. So this was sort of a safe space to build skills and to sort of simulate the tasks they'd be doing. So how can you build your own? We tried to build our games on a kind of a triangle of 3 things: a useful learning goal, a relevant subject matter, and a compelling game mechanic. So here, we wanted students to be able to focus on making good decisions about how to run their investigation. So rather than have students write the findings of the report out, we wrote them ahead of time and automatically unlocked them when students did a particular action. We also did a little bit of work trying to make the story hold together. So students really needed to use narrative clues in order to understand where to go next. And so things were relatively simple, but it was important that they were internally consistent. And finally, we tried to make the game actually fun to play. So we added a little bit of randomness to some of the game elements, and we tried to spread findings out so that students would uncover some early on and not get discouraged. We ended up with about 1.5 to 2 times as many available actions as the students had weeks to go and find them. All right, so, and the last thing is that technology here is optional. I didn't use anything more sophisticated than Word or Excel to put all of this together. And also, an analog approach helps students interact with humans, right? And helps sort of build those skills and gives us an opportunity as professors to improvise around some of the rough edges. So what's next for us? We're going to be doing a little bit more experimentation. We're probably going to run the class again with a bit more interactivity and try and riff on a few different game structures. So the game that I just described might be considered sort of an information discovery game. And you could apply this sort of structure to a few other games and a few other topics. So this is sort of a proof of concept that I made of a digital version of the reentry game that we created. The second type of game structure we're riffing on is almost a Tinder-like model. So generating lots and lots of scenarios with binary outcomes. So in this case, this is pretrial risk assessment. And it algorithmically generates names and crimes and stories and risk assessments. It should be ready, I think, in a couple of months. And finally, we're sort of looking at more open-ended structures, right? So some of the most compelling simulations that I played when I was in law school fit on a single 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And all the while, we're trying to be sort of diligent documenters and sharing what we've learned, and maybe if it's useful, to start to build tools for the rest of the community to help build games like this. And I don't think that I'm trying to make students into better programmers or better prosecutors or better policymakers. I think what I am trying to do is make students into better experts, right? And to help them make sense of sort of a messy, unstructured, uncertain world. And so that no matter what the future of lawyering looks like, students will hopefully be able to figure out how to play the game. Thanks very much.